Okay, great. It looks like everyone from the waiting room has been able to join. So we will now start with a brief presentation of our panelists. Okay, first up, I would like to introduce Stephen Bakari. Stephen graduated from the Masters of Arts in Gerontology program very recently, just in 2020. He served on the Diversity Committee and was an active member of the Student Gerontology Association and the USC Clover Club. He was a recipient of the Order of Arete Award. He has studied abroad and worked as a health educator and consultant in Cape Town, South Africa, London, United Kingdom, Baja, Mexico, and LA. He has experience working as a healthy aging and wellness educator. Next up is Emily Neighbors. Emily graduated from the Master of Science in Gerontology program in 2009. She's an expert in educating service providers and professionals on fall prevention with a focus on home modification and aging in place strategies. She has developed a home assessment and informed tool for use by the local fire department, also developed a home safety kit, and it uses resources for older adults and professionals, and has presented at national, state, and local professional conferences. In addition, she works as program coordinator and evaluator at the Fall Prevention Center of Excellence. She collaborates with professionals and agencies in the community to reduce the risks of falls among older adults. She's presently working on two support projects, the Fall Prevention Coalition and Home Safely Adaptations for the Elderly, also known as Home Safe. And our third panelist today is Shivanti Kariwasam. She graduated from the Master of Science in Gerontology program in 2018. During her time at USC, Shivanti was involved in many different labs and projects, including the USC Healthy Aging Lab, the USC Creativity and Aging Initiative, and the Iguidanos Laboratory. She has experience working as an independent researcher, studying physical and psychological implications of grandparents and caregiving in Sri Lanka, and assisting with Alzheimer's disease awareness in the Colombo, Sri Lanka area. She is currently an occupational therapy student. So please welcome our panelists for today. Thank you. Okay. So I would like to delve straight into our questions. We have a lot of great questions that have been submitted by all of our students that are here on the panel. But one of them is, let's start with kind of what stood out to you most at your time in your program at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Emily, would you like to start?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think a few things stood out definitely. I felt like it really introduced me to the gerontology landscape, especially in Los Angeles and California. But I remember having, there were guest speakers that came into a bunch of classes, and I was exposed to journal articles, and just got a mix of academics, but also practical information. And I felt like it really gave me a foundation, the kind of foundation I was looking for to make a career for myself in this field. And then I'd also say the faculty, the faculty at the gerontology school were really great in terms of teaching the courses, but also just encouraging you to pursue your interests.
Wonderful, thank you. Shivanti? We're having a little, can we hear you now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Good.
Thank you.
So everything that Emily said, I completely agree with. I think that the school provides such a diverse opportunity in terms of getting scholarly activities as well as social activities, and it really molds you into a well-rounded aging professional. Another thing that stood out to me was the small-knit community within the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. USC is a big school, but I found that the gerontology community is kind of small but mighty. And I liked that I got to know my professors on a more personal level, as well as developed a network that I can still call on today, even though I've graduated and I'm in occupational therapy school. And so I really liked that atmosphere that gave me the opportunity to grow in many different areas, professionally and personally.
Wonderful, thank you. And Stephen?
Definitely agree with what Emily and Shivanti have said. Just to add to it, I'd say the research that I was exposed to as a grad student. In undergrad, I did business and really didn't come across like real academic research other than case studies. But my time, you know, in the master's program was just research. And what was so great was it was like the professors were, you know, talking about what was really happening now. And then I could share that, you know, in my own work and with family and friends. And I thought it was so cool to be exposed to that. And then getting into research projects as well. You have so many opportunities. And I worked on a study actually with the University of Washington, with the School of Social Work that was offered from the gerontology school. So I was getting that exposure, and had I chosen a different program, I'm not sure I would have had that experience.
Wonderful, thank you. So it sounds like you guys have talked about, you know, a small knit community and being able to be more personal in the program. Would you say that you still stay in touch with a lot of your fellow students that you were in the program with, or other professors? Shivanti?
I would say definitely yes. I actually did the progressive degree program for the master's degree, and so I was at USC earlier. But the people in my master's program, I still talk to very frequently. We have group texts going on, and I find that I can still talk to faculty regularly, the ones that I was close to, and I still ask some people for career advice, even to this day, which I didn't think that I would have going into the program, but it's nice knowing that if I ever want advice, I can always turn back to the faculty at the school as well. I also like to think that my fellow students and I at the school, we developed a connection that continues professionally. And so I work in healthcare now, and a lot of my fellow students are in healthcare or in med school and finishing med school right now. And I like to think that together we talk about different things in our fields and how they relate back to gerontology and things that we've learned. And it's nice to know that there's that gerontology bond connecting us, and that we can still all support older adults, even though we're in different arenas now.
Wonderful. Stephen?
Yeah, so I just graduated in May, so it's not too long that I've been out. But definitely the faculty, you know, I had many different professors, but I think what made me successful in my time at USC was really getting to know my professors, and just taking the initiative to get to know them. I think there's some classes where they're really large, like maybe 70 other students. So for me, it was really, how do I get them to know what my interests are and how can they help? The faculty are so supportive, and they want to help. So I think what's critical as a grad student is how can you let others know where you are and what they can do to help you, because they do want to help. And I have professors that are my reference letters right now. So it's we're in communication. And another person who's also been super helpful is Maria Henke. She's someone to really approach and get to know, because she's a really special person, and will go through hoops to help you as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. And Emily, can you share with your experience, especially working at the Center for Fall Prevention Center of Excellence?
Yeah, sure. It's maybe a different, more unique situation, because I'm working for the school or within the school. So I'm definitely in touch with, I'm working with very closely with one faculty member, but then I am still in touch with other professors who taught the classes that I had taken. So that's great. And they really are, as Stephen and Shivanti said, very supportive. And then, yeah, even though I graduated in 2009, I am still in touch with some of my classmates, and especially, I guess, on Facebook. That's kind of showing how old I am, but just seeing, what they're up to still in the gerontology world, and working in research or at an area agency on aging. It's really cool to see where we've gone after graduation, and how we've all kind of become part of the gerontology world in our own way.
Wonderful, thank you. And so now that you've built this connection with your classmates and your professors, how do you think that connections help prepare you for your working environment now, or prepare you for the next step in your journey after your program, with either things that you've learned or the connections that you've made to be able to really expand upon your knowledge outside of the classroom? Stephen?
So that's a really good question. I think for me, it was getting to know my professors and sharing my interests and asking, for them for contacts or organizations that are doing similar work. That was really important to me. And then, I think as time gone, I did the program in 2 years. And I'm glad that I took it slowly, because I kind of would get exposed to one side of gerontology one semester, and then another class would bring me to another sphere. And so, just kind of talking to the professors and, other students, because a lot of students already have worked in the field. A lot of them are online students, and you can connect with them and ask them what their experiences have been in that field that maybe you're interested. So I think it's really just about immersing yourself and being really curious to learn more, as much as you can about something. And not being afraid to ask for help and share.
Wonderful. Emily?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of along similar lines, but I was thinking and kind of writing some notes down before this, and I was thinking, take opportunities and make opportunities. And I feel very lucky that I feel like opportunities were presented to me, and I took them, and I'm so glad I did. I was able to help write a journal article, and I learned how to do grant writing. This was as a research assistant at the Fall Prevention Center, but in a research assistant position while I was a student. Going to professional conferences like ASA, American Society on Aging, for example, and making connections there, and being able to spend time with your classmates or colleagues and your professors outside of school. And just exploring your ideas and interests, and again, not being afraid to talk with your professors and see how you can explore more, and maybe find some opportunities to work with them beyond just being a student in the class.
Wonderful, thank you. And Shivanti?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think not only the professors, but also the guest lecturers that come and speak as well. A lot of them are leaders in the field of gerontology, and I remember, I think it was Maria, I'm pretty sure it was Maria, who told me that you should not be afraid to go up to them after class and introduce yourself and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm interested in this topic that you talked about. Here's my email. Could we connect more? And that's something that has stuck with me, because I think that it's such a good way to meet other people in the field, especially if you're interested in a topic that they're doing. I think that your relationship with a professor, as well as that, can help you potentially make more connections in the future. And I also think that the opportunities are in all aspects of the school. I've found a lot of joy in the Student Gerontology Association, and networking through that, I got to meet a whole lot of people, particularly aging professionals when planning student events like Careers in Aging Week, but also meeting alumni as well that also offered jobs and other things to me when I was graduating. So it's a big way of just talking to people to get to know about these opportunities.
Wonderful, thank you. So it sounds like all of you were either involved in research or SGA at your time at the school. Can you explain a little bit more or go into maybe an event that really stood out to you where it gave you the opportunity to do that networking and get that firsthand experience of working with professionals already in the field? Emily?
Sure. I would say I'd mentioned the professional conferences. When I was looking for a position upon graduation, I had an opportunity to have an informational interview with a representative of an organization that I was interested in at one of these conferences. So that was a really cool opportunity to be there as a student, but also be exploring potential future avenues. Yeah.
Wonderful. Shivanti?
An event that stands out to me, I was involved in the USC Creativity and Aging Initiative, and Emily and I are both smiling because we were both involved with it at one point in time. But I really liked that opportunity. As an undergrad and as a grad student, I worked for the initiative, and we got to plan events in the community for Los Angeles Jewish elders, and we were highlighting their life stories and having young adults turn those stories into pieces of artwork. And I liked it because by the end of it, we were going out into the community and doing these intergenerational art exhibitions at different senior centers within the Los Angeles area. And so it was nice to get this opportunity to see the Los Angeles Jewish Home and other entities in the Reseda area where we were putting on the programs. And it was a good way to see that community aspect that we had always talked about in class. And so I felt like it kind of, the research side and the work side of it brought together everything that we had learned in class.
Wonderful. Stephen?
Yeah, so if you're interested in research, the colloquiums are really great. They were kind of almost every Thursday, and they would have someone from a different university come and speak on certain research that they were doing. So I thought that was a really great networking opportunity. And then SGA is awesome because they had different people within the field around Los Angeles who'd come and speak about what their path to gerontology looked like, and they'd connect you with other people, which is awesome. So I think there's different routes you can really go in terms of the networking. It's totally up to you, which is, yeah, it's just endless.
Wonderful, thank you. So what is one thing that you learned in your classes that's kind of really resonated with you, or one thing that you really use in your day-to-day job now or learning experience? Shivanti?
I know there's a quote that I live by that was in one of my classes. It was called, one older adult, one older adult. And it really speaks to the diversity in aging that exists. And it's a quote that I heard it in our physiology of aging class, I believe. And I share it with a lot of my classmates because when I talk about my interest in aging and gerontology and the work that I do in OT school is primarily with older adults. It's something that I use to illustrate how varied experiences are. And I think the school really did emphasize that in the curriculum as well, in teaching that motto, and that you can't always treat older adults all the same, that there's diversity within aging.
Wonderful. Great quote. Stephen?
Yeah, I love that quote. I guess I'd say that it's, you know, how prevalent ageism is in our community, and that it really goes unchecked. I didn't really know too much about ageism before getting into the program, and then there's a few professors that were doing research on it, and I thought it was really interesting. And then I think it's just, yeah, the way that it's changed the way I speak to other people, and sort of can help educate, right? Because I think that's a part of our job as gerontologists, is to advocate for older people, and it's something that I just think I didn't expect getting into the program to learn about this whole class of like discrimination that is really rampant, and it goes on all the time, like all in the media, and I just thought that was like really interesting.
Wonderful, thank you. And Emily?
Yeah, it's actually something that Dr. John Pinus has said, and he's a policy professor, and he is also now my boss. And he's said that we work in the field of housing for older adults and making sure that it's supportive so they can stay in their homes as they age. And he said that he likes to call housing like Peter Pan housing, that it was made for people who never grow old, if you're familiar with Peter Pan. But it really resonates with me because I find it to be so true, and it goes beyond housing, that the built environment, just so much of our lives, society, it's not necessarily built with aging in mind. And what we work on is raising awareness so people can make changes to housing to make it more supportive, not just for older people or people living with disabilities, but really for everyone. So bringing that awareness of what living life as an older person may be like in our world, and how it's a very different perspective than someone, a younger active person.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So it sounds like a lot of you guys have explained that being a gerontologist is also being an educator, and kind of educating people about practices, discriminations that's been going on. So Stephen was in the Master of Arts program, and both Emily and Shivanti were in the Masters of Science program. And those programs differ mainly in a field practicum kind of component, which is kind of like an internship. So Emily and Shivanti, can you talk about how your field practicum and that internship component really allowed you to be educators as gerontologists? Shivanti, would you like to start?
Okay, so I'm just thinking back to my practicum, and I remember my practicum was working with the USC Chan Division of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy on a fall prevention intervention, and as well as working at Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center. I had made my practicum more on the occupational therapy side because I knew that was what I was going to do. But in terms of an educator role, it's interesting to have this gerontological lens and bringing it to occupational therapy because they're very interrelated. And my role in the project was developing a kind of a 3D virtual reality tool that older adults could put on these glasses and then put their smartphones and then use this video to experience what it would be like to go to different environments like the movie theaters or the bus stands, things like that. And I remember I was working with other undergrads who weren't necessarily in occupational therapy or in gerontology, and it was explaining to them different things that impact older adults, such as uneven surfaces and how that works with mobility devices, and explaining why for an older person, the environment needs to be built a certain way, kind of what Emily was talking about too. But in that kind of sense, the educator role is more about advocating for equal services for older adults.
Wonderful, thank you. And Emily?
Sure. I think what I went through in 2009 may have been different from the present day practicum, but I did, part of it was an internship, and I interned at an AARP office in Pasadena. And it really expanded my knowledge of policy and local policymakers and policymakers across the state, and the importance, kind of like what Shivanti was saying about advocacy, in a slightly different way, but advocating with elected officials and educating them on the importance of these issues, older adult issues, to really, policymakers are the ones that can make long-lasting systematic change. So that was kind of a new topic for me. I had learned about policy within the classroom, but to have a hands-on experience like that was really great, and gave me kind of a broader context for the areas that I was studying.
That's great to hear that lens and the program set that up to have that experience and give you that lens. And Stephen, as a healthy aging and wellness educator, how did that play into your experiences that you could bring into the classroom within your Master of Arts program?
Yeah, so the class on the mind-body connection was like pivotal for me and what I do. I also teach yoga and mindfulness. I was involved, I was teaching at the USC Fitness Center, which was another opportunity that I had, and then teaching at different residential care facilities, different programs. So had I not taken that class, I never would have had this wealth of information on like stress and the impacts that it causes to the body, you know. And for me, that class was my favorite class that I took in the program. There were many, but that really was, you know, like a springboard for me.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. So now that you guys have talked about sort of your internships and your foundation within the field, can you talk a little bit about your process of finding your next step or the next job within the field of gerontology? Emily, would you like to start?
Sure. Is this like after we graduated?
Yeah, like after you graduated, or your first full-time position, or just how, you know, going through the next process of you have your first internship and then what do you do next?
Absolutely. I was a research assistant at the Fall Prevention Center, and I was able to use what I had learned as a research assistant to help write a grant. And I was part of an evaluation team, and we were looking at local fall prevention coalitions across the state. But there was no fall prevention coalition for the Los Angeles area. So we wrote a grant for that, and we received it, and that is actually what enabled me to become a staff person there at the Fall Prevention Center. And I've been writing grants and getting myself involved in more projects ever since. Yeah, and I also think the connections I was able to make as a research assistant, those relationships, and able to demonstrate what I might be like, or my professionalism or what have you. It was just a great opportunity that turned into a position.
Wonderful, thank you. Shivanti?
I think that for me, my time at the school, I got to really imagine and dream of what gerontology could be like in the future. And one of the things for me was I have an interest in international development, and I remember hearing in a global health and aging class about how our society is aging. There needs to be more infrastructure across the globe. And I remember after graduation, I really wanted to go to Sri Lanka, where my parents are from, and work. And I applied for a fellowship, which I ultimately got. And I ended up working there for 6 months beginning. And then I really liked it. And so I went back to my fellowship funder and I said, I have these skills in aging and I would like to work here in the future. I can do any different thing that you need relating to aging. If you want to add it to your project, Sri Lanka is a fast aging society within Asia, and I think this could be a good tool to help enhance your projects. And I remember really pushing my boss and telling her at different times, society is only growing older. This is something that you'll need to think about. And by the end of it, she offered me a position, and I stayed on and I worked in their peace building and community dialogue for the Asia Foundation. And I created my own position, kind of looking at ageism within district interreligious committees and adding aging in their gender equality and social inclusion audits. And so I think that my experience within the school of being able to dream and imagine possibilities really gave me the opportunity to learn how to articulate my vision for gerontology and to bring that to the fields that I'd like to work in. And that's also important for occupational therapy as well, as I advocate for both successful aging within the field as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And Stephen?
So right now I'm seeking full-time employment because what I do is I'm self-employed and it's really hard right now with COVID. And so I'm looking more at public health opportunities, and it's challenging. What I would say is to look at the jobs that you are interested in now. Don't wait till you're through with the program. I knew a lot of students who were just kind of saw the degree as, oh, I'll get this job once I graduate, and they are really struggling. But to really use USC as an on-ramp, off-ramp, and while you're in the program, get the experience now. Take an internship, whether it's through the school or another internship, and just try as many different things while you're in the program rather than waiting till the end. I think it's also important to get certifications and bolster up on language because that just makes your resume even stand out even more. So I think it's about exploring and jumping into something, trying stuff out, and not waiting till the degree isn't going to get you the job. You are going to get the job through your experience that you've already done. And if you find the dream jobs that you like, what are how many jobs are available, first of all, and then what are the skill set that those jobs require? Because you can obtain those skills while you're in school, and that's just going to make you a much more successful candidate down the road.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I like how you brought up the different possibilities within the program. What we discussed in our session yesterday was how there's kind of different facets of gerontology: the social side, the policy side, biology, psychology. And a lot of our programs aim to blend all four of those different kind of core modules together. And bringing back up earlier what you guys were mentioning about staying in contact with some of your colleagues and your programs being able to allow you to go into kind of either one of those kind of four core modules. Can you talk about your experiences with some of your friends from the programs and maybe different routes that they took, different from yours? Emily, would you like to start?
Sure. Some of my friends from the program went on to pursue PhDs and are teaching at universities. One friend went on to start the PhD program, and then not at USC, but elsewhere, not at our gerontology school, elsewhere. And then decided that actually wasn't the right path for her. And so then she began working at an area agency on aging. And I've seen people go into policy, go into working at senior housing, senior living communities. There really are so many different possibilities. It's kind of a tangent, but I'd also like to say that it was just so cool when I was a student. I just remember taking different classes and then having those connections between classes, like, oh, wow, I learned about this in my other class, but it totally applies here. And just the different disciplines within gerontology, how they all complement each other. And just when you were talking about the different subjects, it made me think of that.
Wonderful, thank you. Stephen?
So I knew other people that continued in the PhD program and are still, still going through that, which is exciting for them. I have other friends who, one of them who's working for a hospice company, and another who is like a care coordinator. There's some people in senior living. And then there's also a lot of other people who are, who aren't working in gerontology, which I think is interesting. Gerontology for me is this big umbrella term, and what I really liked that I chose gerontology is that I can apply this gerontology, lens in kind of everything. And so what I think is really useful is spending time to really create a easy to understand message of what gerontology is, because there's a lot of people who don't know, and being able to communicate that effectively is really helpful.
Wonderful, thank you. Shivanti?
I have a lot of friends who work in healthcare, but I also have friends in the program who went on to do law and to do business administration as well, which stands out to me. I have a friend who became a healthcare consultant in San Francisco and started talking about wellness for older adults as well. And so there are different avenues that you could take this degree, definitely.
Wonderful, thank you. So now going back to your own work experience, your own careers, your studies, what would you say is the most important aspect of your career? And if you were looking for a new job, it would have to be a must in your new position. Stephen?
So the question is sorry, say this question again.
Yeah, like what aspect of a job or a position within the field of gerontology is most crucial to you? And if you were to start a new program or a new position, it would have to be in the position itself.
Yeah, so health education is what I'm really passionate about, and sharing how others can obtain optimal health is important. There's so many different facets under that, whether it's nutrition or exercise, wellness. It's all very interesting. And the job search right now, there's a lot of jobs, it looks like, in health education, but also on the public health side, it's really slow. So I'm having to be patient and just keep expanding my network and reaching out and using LinkedIn to find if there's other USC alumni, and using that as my introduction, and say, hey, I'm a fellow Trojan, and how's your experience been at the organization? And I've had some success with that, and others it's not been successful. But I think what it's just taught me is just to keep throwing the line out, and it lands somewhere. It just the action of is what matters most, is taking the initiative to do it.
Wonderful, thank you. Shivanti?
I think for me, the things that I look for in a job is flexibility. I'd like the idea of having a job that supports my interests and I can grow with as well. Particularly looking at places where there are opportunities for learning both professionally and personally, and interesting projects in that sense, as well as opportunities to meet people of diverse backgrounds and of different experiences.
Wonderful. And Emily?
Yeah, I would say just being able to see the impact that my work is having on others. I instruct an online course for professionals who are working in the fields of aging, disability, housing, and healthcare that are all directly or indirectly related to home modification. And it's really gratifying to see that we're connecting them with resources and information and building their skills to better serve the older adults that they're in contact with. And so we're training professionals who are out there reaching way more people than I ever could alone. So yeah, being able, and we're also kind of translating research into user-friendly information that people can use in the community. So being able to just make an impact and build other people's capacity to serve the, address the needs of older adults has been really great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So now we're going to move into our Q&A section. So for any of our attendees that have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And while everyone is typing, I have one more question for the panelists. And that is, if you could give one piece of advice to a future gerontologist that's interested in applying to a master's program, PhD, or a graduate certificate, what would it be? Stephen.
One thing I would say, just really use the resources that are available. USC is, I mean, there's resources within the School of Gerontology, and then there's the greater USC community. There's the Writing Center, which I found really helpful. There's the Career Services Center, which is also really helpful. Like, the more that I put myself out there, the more I found I was like a part of the, the Trojan community. I think with the School of Gerontology, it was said earlier that it is small but mighty, and that's definitely true. I think get exposed to the other schools within SC and network.
Wonderful, thank you. Emily?
Sure. I would say just really demonstrate your passion and commitment and dedication to this issue. If you know, like, specifically within gerontology what you're interested in, just really convey that, because I think that it moves people. People can tell just that you really care and that you want to pursue this, that you're driven. And I think that can make a difference and make people take notice.
Wonderful. And Shivanti?
I think to go off of what Stephen said about putting yourself out there, I think that's so important, and that would be my piece of advice as well. Not only at USC, but also outside the community as well. Like, for example, if you're out and about and there's a issue that you see that's related to aging, take advantage of that and use your professional skills in that realm as well. And also, don't be afraid to really call yourself a gerontologist and make connections that way. I feel like by using that label, there's a lot of power, and especially with USC, USC has a big name in gerontology, and that's something that I've found while being, I live in St. Louis now. Even out here, USC and gerontology has a good reputation, and also don't be afraid to use that connection that you have there.
Definitely. I'm also a USC grad, and that's one thing that really attracts me to USC is the alumni network, and we call it our Trojan family. And being able to just walk down the street, see someone else wearing a USC shirt that you've probably never met, and throw up the fight on, and you'll most likely get a response back. it carries a lot of weight as well. Definitely.
Yeah, that's happened everywhere. I feel like I've been, whether it's on a plane or on a bus or just in some random city, like it's the like you see, SC or Trojans or something, and yeah, you can make friends. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it happens anywhere in the world, outside of the US, inside, and it can be in the most random places that you never even would have thought. Great. I have a private DM question. What was your favorite class? I'll open that up to anyone.
Well, my favorite class was, this might be morbid to some, but it's not to me. Mine was End of Life Care with Susan Anguidinos. I liked learning about death and dying in other cultures, as well as how that impacts our healthcare system. And it was something that I didn't think about before school, and it really opened my eyes about what I wanted in life personally as well. And so that class really did have an impact on me. She also has other classes where she looks at dying in different cultures. She goes to Italy for a class, I believe, as well. And so it's very interesting to learn about that side of aging, because even though it's not technically something that we think about, it is a part of aging and end of life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Emily or Stephen, what was your favorite class?
I can go. I don't know if it exists now, but it was with Ed Schneider, and he had, I think it was 589, but I am not remembering what it was called. But he would have guest speakers come in all the time, like Shivanti said, just really important people in Los Angeles gerontology field, like the director or general manager of the Department of Aging, and just like the movers and shakers. And it was like each week someone new would come in, and it would be so inspiring to hear how they got to where they are and their words of wisdom. So that class, that was my one of the first classes that I took when I first started, and that was the one.
Wonderful. Stephen?
Yeah, so I have two of my favorite classes. One I spoke about earlier is the mind-body connection. That was co-taught by Paul Nash, who's an excellent professor, lots of enthusiasm. And then Andre Iramia, who is the biology side in neuroscience, which I've just found absolutely fascinating. And then the other class that I really liked was mindful aging. And I took that class my first semester, and it really just kind of tore down what I thought about the field I would go into with gerontology, and just provided this just really like amazing experience, because it was kind of taught by like a seminar sort of style. So we'd read books and then come to class each week and discuss the readings and really get to know the other people in the program really well. And it just, the way the teacher, Mrs. Dr. B, she's known as, she just has this amazing presence about her, and a lot of really good information that you just get out of that class in regards to wellness and aging and religion too. It was really fascinating.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have another question. Your practicums that Shivanti and Emily did you do them part-time or did you do them full-time? And did you do it with the online or the residential program? Shivanti?
For me, I did mine part-time, and I did mine with the residential program.
Great.
Mine was before before that kind of format, but I was actually like doing two different internships. One was at AARP, and then the second was within the Fall Prevention Center of Excellence, where I was a research assistant. And so each one of those was part-time, kind of going back and forth between the two.
Great, wonderful. And then another question is, in your programs, did you have any classes, or in your classes, did you talk about the topic of dementia care?
Yeah.
Emily, would you like to start, or Shivanti?
Shivanti, you can go ahead and I can go after.
I was going to say, yes, we did talk about dementia care. And what I liked about the program is that it wasn't just one class where we talked about it. It was throughout different classes, you would see different layers of it. So I remember learning about dementia care in a counseling class on aging, and then in a psychology class on aging. And so it was spread out from what I remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like the physiology of it in the psychology class, even possibly in the policy class, it does talk a little bit about fall prevention and safety in the home environment, and how that there are specific strategies related to people with dementia when you're looking at that. Yeah, and also in the policy class, I remember writing, there was one article where, or one assignment where we had to read an article about Alzheimer's disease, like advocacy for Alzheimer's disease. So yeah, there are so many different angles, like Shivanti said.
Yeah, and as for me, it was also spread throughout different classes.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any other questions? You are again welcome to put them in the chat. If not, I am also dropping my email in the chat one more time. So if it's something more private, oh great, we have another one. Yeah, could you guys tell us about some of your preparation that you did before applying to your graduate program? Specifically, as did you look at career planning or skills required for certain jobs or connections?
I can go. That's an excellent question. I was working as an office manager, just kind of administrative work. And then I realized I was interested in aging or jobs that had to do with helping older people. And I had no idea that there was a word called gerontology to describe it. And I think I just Googled around, and then I found a certificate, like a graduate certificate in gerontology in Northern California, where I was living at the time. And so that was great and definitely helpful. And then I was able to get a job as a office manager in a home health agency. But I kind of wanted to get above the administrative level and get to a higher level in gerontology. And the MSG program totally did that for me. But I think that the certificate class certainly helped me in terms of research. But yeah, I think that even if you don't necessarily have a ton of experience with that the classes are supportive enough along the way to help.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Stephen?
Yeah, I kind of came to the gerontology school by chance. I think it just kind of kept appearing in my Google search. I was committed to a different program actually in New York, and I just wasn't sure about it. And gerontology seemed to kind of fit all of my interests. And then I reached out. I spoke to Sarah in the admissions office, and then she connected me with Shivanti a few years ago before I started the program, and then another student. And it was just kind of this getting to know gerontology more through the other students. So yeah.
Wonderful. And our last response, Shivanti?
I have a different approach into the master's program because it was a progressive degree, but I think the steps that I took to applying for USC for undergrad were steps that some of my peers in the master's program did take as well. One of them was volunteering in the community with older adults. I think a large part of it to know if you're suited for the profession is to actually go out and volunteer. Also to read as much as you can on subjects related to aging, and not just like textbooks, but like articles and things like, yeah, like what Stephen said, being mortal is a great one, but like different things like that, looking at aging in popular culture as well. I think those are other opportunities to get involved.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So thank you. As we have now approached the top of the hour, we have run out of time, but we want to thank our panelists for their time in answering all of our questions. We want to thank all of you for attending and listening to our panelists speak. Again, tomorrow is our last session of this virtual series that we're doing about the application process at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And I just want to thank our panelists one last time. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone.